When I first met my husband, Harry, I was drawn to his warmth and the life we could build together. At the beginning of our relationship, I didn't think much of his sister Kayla, but as time passed, I quickly realized that our connection would be complicated, largely because of her. Initially, I genuinely liked Kayla. She was friendly and I made efforts to be close to her. But with time, her behavior began to show signs of being manipulative, negative, and toxic, and I was quickly finding that any peace I had in my life seemed to be constantly disrupted by her actions. Kayla seemed to have a problem with Harry and I being together from the start. She wasn't overt about it, but her actions spoke louder than words. I had always known that Harry and his sister had a history of tension, but I didn't realize just how deep it ran. She'd frequently remind him of his ex-girlfriends, talking about them as though she was still emotionally attached to their past relationships. Kayla was often bringing up how well his exes were doing, sometimes even suggesting that Harry should reach out to them again. At first, I thought maybe it was harmless, but the more she did it, the more it seemed like she was trying to create distance between us. Harry was quick to pick up on it, and he would ask her to stop bringing up his past. But despite his requests, Kayla's comments didn't stop. They became more frequent, and her underlying intentions became clearer. She would mock me, saying that I was jealous of his exes and that I wasn't good enough for him. These hurtful comments, made in front of others or just privately between us, started to chip away at my confidence. I never really understood why she seemed so focused on Harry's past relationships, especially when they were long over and we were building a future together. As the months went on, her attempts to undermine me became more intense. I was starting to feel like I was walking on eggshells around her. Kayla's comments were never direct, but they were always designed to make me feel inferior or to question my relationship with Harry. When Harry and I decided to move in together, Kayla went so far as to tell him that I had too many defects as a woman and that he could easily find someone better than me. That was a crushing blow to my self-esteem. It wasn't just a passing comment, it felt like a calculated effort to make him doubt our relationship. I felt deeply hurt that someone I was trying so hard to get along with would go to such lengths to create tension between me and Harry. Despite her behavior, I tried to be patient with Kayla. I didn't want to cause unnecessary conflict, and I hoped that over time things would improve. But they didn't. As Harry and I grew closer and became more serious, her resentment only deepened. After we got engaged, Kayla's attitude became even more pronounced. Everyone around us, including our families, celebrated our engagement, but Kayla's reaction was far from supportive. She sat there silently during the announcement and then, unexpectedly, got up and left the gathering. I was taken aback by her reaction. It felt like her jealousy was bubbling to the surface, and she couldn't even hide it for a moment. Later that night, Kayla called Harry, sobbing and accusing him of not valuing her enough to be the first to know about our engagement. She claimed that she was the closest person to him, and that she should have been the first to hear the news. Her emotional outburst was both manipulative and attention-seeking. It was clear to me that, to her, it wasn't about being happy for her brother. It was about making everything, including our relationship, revolve around her. This was the turning point. I had been patient, I had tried to understand her, but I couldn't ignore the way she was treating me any longer. Kayla's behavior had reached a level that I couldn't tolerate anymore. She sent me a message, bordering on a demand, telling me how I should treat her brother and how I had no place in his life. It was as if she was trying to control our relationship, like I was the outsider, and I couldn't allow that to continue. I left her message on read, and I'm sure that infuriated her even more. But I wasn't about to engage in her manipulative tactics. The final straw came during our wedding preparations. Despite numerous attempts by both Harry and our future mother-in-law to call her out, Kayla continued to be involved in the process in ways that made me uncomfortable. She was always there, offering unsolicited opinions on everything from the wedding dress to the decorations. Her comments were consistently negative, and she never hesitated to express her dissatisfaction with my decisions. One day, I overheard her mocking me for a centerpiece I had chosen, saying it lacked class and that Harry deserved someone better. That was when I lost control. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was no longer invited to the wedding. I had had enough of her constant criticism and her behavior that was clearly meant to humiliate me. To my surprise, Kayla was shocked that I finally stood up for myself. She didn't expect me to challenge her. She tried to call Harry, pleading for him to control me, to make me apologize for embarrassing her. But Harry thankfully backed me up completely. He made it clear that Kayla's behavior was unacceptable, and if she couldn't respect me, she wouldn't be a part of our special day. Despite her apology, I chose not to engage further, and I kept my distance from her. It was a hard decision to make, but it was necessary for my own well-being and for the health of my relationship with Harry. After the incident with the wedding and the clear distance I put between myself and Kayla, I thought things would improve, but the tension between us only seemed to intensify. Although Harry and I were both excited about our future, Kayla's interference continued to cast a dark shadow over our relationship. Despite my clear boundaries, she seemed to find new ways to make her presence felt, often in the most insidious ways. I tried to ignore it, but the manipulative behavior continued, often under the guise of concern for me or my relationship with Harry. The next big moment came when I had my son, Nate. Throughout my pregnancy, Kayla had been distant, and I hadn't heard much from her. But when the time came to deliver, things took a turn. I had hoped that, with the birth of my child, the negative energy in our lives would subside, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Kayla made it clear that she wasn't happy with how things were going. She tried to impose herself on the birth process, claiming that she should be allowed to be a part of the moment. While I appreciated her concern, I was resolute about keeping the experience intimate, just for Harry and me. When Nate was born, Kayla immediately tried to assert herself as if she had some special claim to him. She wanted to visit right away, which I was fine with at first, but over time, it became apparent that her interest wasn't entirely genuine. It wasn't about being a loving aunt or supporting us. It was about her need to control the situation and impose herself into our lives once again. Despite her behavior toward me, I tried to let her connect with Nate. After all, Harry's family meant something to me, and I didn't want to cause more unnecessary conflict. For a brief period, Kayla's behavior seemed to improve. She was sweet with Nate, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she had turned a corner. But it didn't take long for her true colors to resurface. She began to make offhand comments about how hard her life was, often blaming others for her problems. She painted herself as the perpetual victim, unable to take responsibility for anything. It was exhausting to listen to her complain about her ex-friends or even her job situations. What was worse, she seemed to be using every opportunity to compare herself to me, acting as though she was the one who had been wronged in every scenario. Her life, according to her, was always more difficult than mine. Even though I was trying to focus on my family and new motherhood, her constant need for attention and sympathy drained me. But the most concerning part of Kayla's behavior was her consistent attempts to tear down my relationship with Harry. She seemed to go out of her way to ask invasive questions, probing into our marriage, trying to plant seeds of doubt in Harry's mind. She would often bring up the idea of a prenuptial agreement, even though Harry and I had never felt the need for one. Her obsession with our financial and personal life was disturbing, and it was clear that she was looking for ways to cause trouble. Her obsession with the idea of us splitting up, combined with her tendency to bring up things from our past, made me feel as though I could never fully escape her negative influence. One evening at a family dinner, the tension reached a breaking point. Kayla, as usual, had been asking probing questions about our finances and whether Harry and I had signed a prenup before marriage. It was strange to say the least, and I couldn't understand why she seemed so fixated on these matters. I had always felt that she didn't respect the boundaries of our relationship, and this conversation only solidified my belief. At first, I tried to brush it off, but Kayla pressed further, suggesting that Harry might be blindsided by me at any moment. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I confronted her directly, asking her why she felt the need to be involved in our private matters. Her answer was shocking. She insisted that she had every right to question us, that it was her responsibility as Harry's sister to make sure he wasn't making a mistake. I was taken aback by her arrogance, her sense of entitlement. It wasn't just about being a protective sister. It was about her trying to control everything in Harry's life, even his relationship with me. It was clear to me now, Kayla was never going to be happy with our marriage no matter what. She would always find a way to try and interfere, to make herself the center of attention. At that moment, I had had enough. I made it clear to Kayla that I would no longer tolerate her constant negativity and interference. I told her that I would no longer allow her to make our lives miserable, and that she needed to respect our boundaries. Harry, who had always been caught in the middle, stood by me and supported my decision. He had seen enough of Kayla's toxic behavior and finally realized just how much damage she had done to our family dynamic. After that confrontation, I distanced myself even further from Kayla. There was no going back. I couldn't allow her to continue poisoning our lives, especially with a young child in the picture. I made it clear to Harry's family that I was no longer willing to engage with Kayla, and I requested that she be kept at a distance for the sake of our family's well-being. I knew this would be hard, but I also knew that if I didn't take this stand, our relationship would continue to be strained, and I would always be battling Kayla's interference. Things only worsened when Kayla's behavior escalated further. She began to manipulate situations, making it seem as if she was the victim of everyone's harsh judgment. This pattern of behavior continued to wear on me, but I was determined to protect my family. I knew that setting firm boundaries with Kayla was the only way forward, even if it meant causing more tension with the rest of the family. In the end, I realized that Kayla would never change. Her jealousy, manipulation, and need to control everything around her were too deeply ingrained. I had to protect myself, my marriage, and my child from the toxic environment she created. And though it was painful to sever those ties, I knew it was the only way to maintain a healthy, happy family life. The months passed after I had distanced myself from Kayla, but the emotional toll it took on me was more significant than I expected. I had hoped that with the separation things would calm down, but they didn't. In fact, it felt as though the tension had only built up over time. Harry, as supportive as he was, seemed to feel torn between his family and his wife, and it became increasingly clear to me that this conflict was taking a toll on him as well. For years, he had been the peacemaker, trying to balance the constant friction between me and his sister. But now, with me standing my ground, it was as though the equilibrium had been shattered. Harry's parents, who had initially supported my decision, started to show signs of wavering. They too were caught in the middle of this conflict. They had seen how much Kayla's behavior had hurt me, but Kayla was their daughter, and they couldn't completely cut ties with her. I understood their position, but it didn't make it any easier to deal with. Every time Kayla's name came up in conversation, I felt my blood pressure rise. I had to work hard to maintain my composure, especially around our son Nate, who was growing up and becoming more aware of the dynamics between the adults in his life. One day, I received a call from my mother-in-law, asking if we could have a conversation. I hesitated for a moment but agreed, figuring it was time to have a frank discussion about where things stood. When we met, she apologized for the way things had gone down with Kayla, explaining that she understood why I needed to set boundaries, but that Harry was feeling more and more distressed about the situation. She also admitted that Kayla had started playing the victim in their conversations, making them feel guilty for not supporting her more. I listened quietly, trying to keep my emotions in check. It was clear that my mother-in-law was conflicted. She didn't want to lose her daughter, but she also saw the hurt that Kayla's actions had caused in our family. As much as I wanted to believe she understood the extent of the damage, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. Why couldn't they see the bigger picture? Why did they continue to cater to Kayla's manipulations? The conversation took a different turn when my mother-in-law brought up the possibility of reconciliation. She said that Kayla had been seeking therapy for a few months and had been working on herself. This revelation caught me off guard. Kayla, the same woman who had constantly belittled me and tried to break up my marriage, was now seeking therapy? Part of me wanted to dismiss it as another one of her manipulative tactics. But at the same time, a small part of me wondered if there was any truth to her claims. Was she finally acknowledging the damage she had caused, or was this just another attempt to get me to lower my guard? My mother-in-law asked if I would be open to meeting with Kayla to discuss things and see if there was a chance for healing. The idea of sitting down with Kayla again made my stomach churn, but I didn't want to completely close the door. I agreed to a meeting, but only on the condition that it would be in a neutral place, away from the family's influence, so I could assess Kayla's sincerity for myself. I was cautiously optimistic but also deeply wary. The day of the meeting arrived and I found myself pacing back and forth, unsure of how things would unfold. Kayla arrived looking different than the last time I saw her. She seemed somewhat put together, more composed than the angry and manipulative person I had once known. She apologized immediately, acknowledging how badly she had treated me over the years. I wasn't sure how to respond at first. Part of me wanted to give her a chance, to believe that she was truly remorseful for her actions. But the other part of me couldn't forget everything she had done to me and my family. We sat down at a quiet cafe and Kayla began to explain her perspective. She admitted that her jealousy had clouded her judgment and that she had struggled with her own insecurities for years. She talked about how she had felt threatened by me, believing that I was taking her place in her brother's life. She claimed that she had never intended to hurt me, but that her actions had been driven by a deep sense of fear and inadequacy. Kayla said that therapy had helped her recognize her toxic behavior and that she was committed to changing. She even asked for my forgiveness, acknowledging the pain she had caused. I was taken aback by her sincerity, but I still couldn't fully let go of the hurt. I listened to her words, but I couldn't help but wonder if this was just another act. Was she really changing, or was she simply saying what she thought I wanted to hear? My instincts told me to be cautious, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Kayla's manipulative nature still lingered beneath the surface. After a long silence, I spoke. I told Kayla that I appreciated her apology, but that it would take time for me to trust her again. I explained that while I was open to the idea of moving forward, I needed to see consistent change in her behavior before I could fully let her back into my life. I also made it clear that I would no longer tolerate any attempts to come between me and my family. My priority now was my husband and son, and I would do whatever it took to protect them from any further harm. Kayla seemed to understand, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like there might be a glimmer of hope for our relationship. But I wasn't naive enough to believe that everything would be fixed overnight. Rebuilding trust would take time, and I wasn't willing to rush the process. As we left the cafe, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had made the right decision. It was a small step forward, but it was a step in the right direction. After that meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Kayla's apology seemed genuine, and for a moment, I allowed myself to hope that things could change between us. But there was a part of me that remained skeptical. I had been hurt too many times before by her manipulations and emotional games. It wasn't easy to forget the years of tension and conflict, and I didn't want to set myself up for disappointment. Harry was cautiously optimistic about the meeting, but even he could tell that I was still unsure about how to move forward. He told me that he was proud of me for being open to reconciliation, but he also reassured me that whatever decision I made, he would support me. I could tell he was relieved that I had agreed to at least give Kayla a chance, but I could also see the weight of the situation on his face. He, too, had been caught in the middle of the constant turmoil between me and his sister for so long. I knew it hurt him to see the strain in our relationship, but I also knew that he understood why I had set the boundaries I did. Despite the tensions, we carried on with life as usual. Our son Nate was growing, and Harry and I were excited to prepare for the arrival of our second child. I tried to focus on the positive aspects of our life, our growing family, our home, and the love that Harry and I shared. We had been through so much together, and I was determined to keep moving forward, regardless of what had happened with Kayla. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that Kayla's presence was still looming over everything. She hadn't contacted me again after our meeting, and for a while, I wondered if that was a good sign. Maybe she was giving me space to process things. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Was she really trying to change, or was she just waiting for the right moment to insert herself back into my life? The situation took a turn when Kayla reached out to Harry. She called him one evening, her voice shaking with emotion. She told him that she had been struggling with her marriage to Jamie and that things were falling apart. She seemed desperate, recounting all the ways she felt misunderstood and alone. Kayla's tone was filled with so much emotion that Harry, being the compassionate person he is, listened intently, offering words of support and encouragement. But when she started to cry, saying she needed to talk to me, Harry became concerned. He knew how fragile our relationship was, and he didn't want to risk pushing me too far. I could sense the tension in the air when Harry told me about the conversation. I wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, I wanted to help her. After all, she was family. But on the other hand, I didn't want to let my guard down again only to be hurt. I told Harry that I wasn't ready to speak with her again and that it wasn't the right time. He respected my decision but expressed his worry that Kayla's emotional state might escalate if we didn't address the situation. The next few days were filled with an air of uncertainty. I couldn't stop thinking about Kayla and what was going on in her life. I didn't want to be the kind of person who turned their back on family, but I had to prioritize my own well-being and the well-being of my family. Kayla's constant emotional manipulation over the years had left me exhausted, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. Things came to a head when a few days later, Kayla showed up at our doorstep unannounced. She had come over to talk, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. She was wearing a long black coat and carrying a small bag, her posture slumped with exhaustion. When she entered our house, she immediately started apologizing, but this time, something was different. There was no anger or bitterness in her voice, just a raw vulnerability that caught me off guard. She explained how her marriage to Jamie was falling apart, how she felt isolated, and how she had nobody left to turn to. It seemed like everything had finally unraveled for her. Kayla's words were laced with sorrow, and for the first time in a long while, I found myself feeling sorry for her. I couldn't deny that she had been a toxic presence in my life for so long, but seeing her like this, broken and vulnerable, made me question everything. Was this the person who had tormented me for so long, or was this a woman who was truly seeking redemption? I listened to her story, but I didn't offer her any immediate forgiveness. Instead, I simply nodded, taking in her words. It felt like a moment of reckoning for both of us. I was still so angry, so hurt by the years of cruelty and manipulation, but I also knew that if I was ever going to move forward, I had to let go of the anger. I couldn't keep carrying it with me, especially with a new baby on the way. After a long silence, I finally spoke. I told her that I could understand her pain, but that I could no longer allow her to be a destructive force in my life. I needed to protect my family, and that meant creating clear boundaries. I told Kayla that I was open to helping her, but that she needed to take responsibility for her actions first. She couldn't expect things to magically heal just because she was in a difficult place. She needed to show that she was willing to make lasting changes in her behavior, not just in words but in actions. Kayla seemed to understand, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a step forward. I told her that I couldn't promise anything, but that I was willing to try. I had to protect my own mental and emotional health, but I also didn't want to close myself off completely from the possibility of healing. As she left that day, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, uncertainty, and a bit of hope. I wasn't ready to embrace Kayla back into my life completely, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for her to change. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to keep moving forward, for the sake of my family and for myself. After that intense conversation with Kayla, things remained uncertain for a while. I didn't know what would come of it, and neither did Harry. He supported me, but I could tell he was also deeply conflicted. He loved his sister, despite everything that had happened, and he desperately wanted things to improve between us. But he also saw how damaging Kayla's behavior had been, not just to me but to our relationship as a whole. There was a tension in the air every time Kayla's name came up, and neither of us could ignore the weight of the unresolved issues. A few weeks went by, and I tried to focus on my pregnancy and everything that came with it. It wasn't easy, especially with the memories of Kayla's past actions looming over me. I had told myself that I would only move forward if I could be at peace with the situation. Yet, every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew she had changed, but could I really trust her again? I had to protect myself, but I also wanted to be open to the possibility of healing for her sake and the sake of our family. Harry, for his part, had been spending more time with his parents, and Kayla's situation seemed to be getting worse. I was told by his mother that Kayla was increasingly isolated and upset about the breakdown of her marriage. She was constantly talking about how she had nobody left in her life who understood her, and this seemed to be pushing her further into bitterness. As much as I had been angry at Kayla for everything she had put me through, I couldn't help but feel a small spark of sympathy. One day, Harry came home from visiting his parents and told me that Kayla had reached out again. This time, however, there was something different in her tone. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't blaming anyone else for her problems. Instead, she simply expressed how much she regretted how things had unfolded between us, and how sorry she was for everything she had done. She admitted that she had been wrong to try to tear us apart and that, in her own way, she was trying to find peace with the mistakes she had made. I was taken aback when Harry told me about the conversation. For the first time in years, Kayla wasn't playing the victim. She wasn't trying to manipulate anyone or twist the situation to make herself seem blameless. She was simply apologizing. It was such a contrast to the Kayla I had known all these years, and it made me question whether I had been too harsh in my judgment. I sat with my thoughts for a long time that evening. Could I forgive her? Could I really let go of the anger and resentment that had built up over so many years? I had to admit that I still carried a lot of hurt from the past, but there was a part of me that wanted to believe in the possibility of change. Maybe she was different now. Maybe she had finally come to terms with her own flaws and was willing to make amends. The next time I saw her, I was nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect. Kayla seemed to sense my hesitation and didn't immediately rush to apologize again. Instead, she simply sat with me in silence for a while. The tension that had once been a constant in our relationship was gone. There was no animosity, no passive-aggressive comments, no subtle jabs. It was just us quietly sharing the same space. Finally, Kayla spoke. She told me that she realized how much damage she had caused not just to me but to our whole family. She talked about how she had been so caught up in her own insecurities and jealousy that she had completely ignored how her actions affected everyone around her. She admitted that it was hard for her to let go of the idea that she was the only woman who could be close to her brother. She had resented me for taking that place in Harry's life, but now she saw how toxic that thinking was. I listened to her, not knowing exactly how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream at her for everything she had put me through, but another part of me understood that she was genuinely trying to make things right. She wasn't asking for immediate forgiveness. She wasn't demanding that things go back to the way they were. She was simply acknowledging the hurt she had caused and offering a sincere apology. After a long silence, I took a deep breath and said, "I don't know if I can forgive you completely. The past is hard to forget, and I've been hurt by you more times than I can count. But I'm willing to try, Kayla. I want to believe that people can change, and I want to believe that we can have a better relationship moving forward." Kayla seemed to relax at my words, though I could see the sadness in her eyes. She knew that she had a long way to go to rebuild the trust she had broken, and I knew that too. But for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of our relationship. Maybe it was just the beginning of a new chapter. As I walked away from that conversation, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. I was relieved that we had finally had an honest conversation, but I was also apprehensive about what the future would hold. Kayla had hurt me in ways that were hard to heal, but the fact that she was finally taking responsibility for her actions gave me hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to build a healthier relationship from here on out. But that didn't mean I was ready to let my guard down completely. I would need time, and Kayla would need to prove herself. We couldn't just erase the past no matter how hard we tried. But for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to believe that there might be a way forward. One where forgiveness was possible and where Kayla could be a part of our family again. In the months that followed, life slowly began to regain a sense of normalcy, despite the shadows of the past still lingering. The events surrounding Kayla's betrayal and the subsequent unraveling of her manipulative actions had left deep scars, but I was determined to move forward. My relationship with Harry had grown stronger, as we had faced the darkest corners of our family dynamics together. Yet, healing wasn't easy, and every day was a delicate balance of moving on while still grappling with the wounds inflicted by his sister. One of the hardest things we had to confront was the issue of trust. Not just in Kayla, who had shattered the bond with her toxic behavior, but also in the broader sense of trusting others. Kayla's actions had hurt more than just me. It had hurt our families, shaken their beliefs in her, and shattered the foundation of what was once a close-knit family unit. While Harry's parents, especially his father, were quick to condemn her, my mother-in-law's grief over her daughter's downfall was palpable. No matter how justified her actions were, no mother wants to see their child fall so far from grace. As the months went by, we slowly began to rebuild our family ties. The first step was offering support to Jamie, Kayla's husband. After the poison incident, we realized that he, too, was a victim in this twisted game Kayla had been playing. Jamie had been devastated by her betrayal and the subsequent fallout, but despite everything, he had remained an integral part of our extended family. We knew that once he recovered physically and emotionally, he needed our support more than ever. We invited him to family gatherings, giving him a place to heal and regain his sense of self. While the road to recovery was long for him, we were glad to see him finally gain the strength to move on from the toxic relationship. The birth of our daughter also provided a much-needed ray of light during this tumultuous time. Her presence was a reminder that life moves forward, and joy can still find its way into the darkest corners. Nate, our son, was thrilled to become a big brother, and watching him embrace his role with so much love and care was truly heartwarming. The bond between our children grew stronger every day, and that connection reminded me that, despite everything we had been through, there was still beauty in our lives. However, Kayla's presence was still a looming threat that I couldn't ignore. Despite her being cut off from our immediate family, she continued to try to manipulate situations in her favor, seeking sympathy wherever she could find it. She would attempt to sow discord between Harry and me, reminding us of the time when she was still the only woman in his life. Her jealousy and possessiveness over Harry were far from over, and it was exhausting to see her cling to the remnants of a power she no longer had. She tried to manipulate her way back into our lives on numerous occasions, but Harry and I were resolute in keeping her at arm's length. One day, Kayla reached out to me again, this time through a more vulnerable approach. She admitted to having undergone therapy in an attempt to deal with her past mistakes, including her jealousy and obsession over Harry. She claimed that she had realized how inappropriate her actions had been and wanted to make amends. I was hesitant to respond. While I was tempted to let go of the past, a deep part of me still couldn't shake off the trauma she had caused. It was a difficult decision, but I knew I couldn't forgive her without first seeing substantial change. When Kayla appeared at a family gathering a few months later, my heart sank. She arrived, apologizing profusely to Harry and me, claiming she had seen the error of her ways. She had even gone as far as to say that therapy had helped her recognize how damaging her behavior had been. While I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, my instincts told me to remain cautious. Harry was equally wary, but he chose to handle the situation with diplomacy, not wanting to escalate things further. His emotional exhaustion from dealing with his sister's turmoil for so many years was evident, and I understood his reluctance to cause another scene. Yet, as the day wore on, I could sense Kayla slipping back into her old patterns. She seemed to be trying to charm everyone around her as if she were putting on an act. My suspicions grew as she made subtle, passive-aggressive comments toward me, attempting to plant seeds of doubt in our relationship. Her manipulations were still evident, despite her claims of personal growth. By the end of the day, I knew that no matter how much she pretended, she hadn't changed. The final straw came when, at another family gathering, Kayla took a step too far. She was once again trying to provoke me, making comments about my parenting and my relationship with Harry. Her jealousy and bitterness had once again surfaced, and this time Harry had had enough. In a moment of pure frustration and anger, he stood up to her in front of everyone, calling her out on her toxic behavior. It was a turning point. Harry had finally reached his limit with his sister's manipulation, and I couldn't have been prouder of him for standing up for me and our family. Kayla's actions were finally exposed for what they were. She had shown no remorse for her past transgressions, and it became clear that she was incapable of changing. As the family made it clear that they were done tolerating her behavior, Kayla was forced to face the consequences of her actions. She had alienated everyone, and there was no way back for her. In the end, life continued to move forward, and though it had been a long and painful journey, I found solace in the love and support of those who truly mattered. Our family had been through so much, but we had emerged stronger, more united than ever. The past was a part of us, but it no longer had the power to define us. And as I watched my children grow, I knew that the future was filled with hope, and that no matter what happened, our family would be okay. The story reveals several important life lessons that can resonate deeply, especially with an older audience who may have experienced their own personal challenges. One key lesson is the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for oneself, even when it feels uncomfortable or difficult. The narrator's decision to confront the toxic behavior of their sister-in-law, Kayla, and ultimately protect their family, reflects the power of self-respect and the necessity of distance from harmful relationships. Throughout the story, we see that toxic people can wear you down over time, but recognizing when to step back is essential to maintaining your own peace and happiness. Another important message is the value of resilience in the face of adversity. Despite the ongoing challenges, the narrator's ability to keep moving forward, supported by their partner and extended family, showcases the power of unity and love in overcoming obstacles. Lastly, the story touches on the concept of personal growth and forgiveness. While the narrator is hesitant to forgive Kayla, they also recognize that forgiveness does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. Instead, it's about learning from the past and making decisions that protect your future. In life, it's vital to recognize that growth often comes through difficult experiences, and true healing is found when we allow ourselves to be surrounded by love, support, and healthy boundaries. These are timeless lessons that remind us to prioritize our well-being while also showing kindness to others, when appropriate. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you found the story insightful and thought-provoking. If you gained any value from this video, please drop a 1 in the comments below to let me know. Your feedback really means a lot to me. Don't forget to like the video if it resonated with you, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more incredible content. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread these important lessons together. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, or any personal experiences you might want to share related to the story. Drop a comment and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks again for being part of this community, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.